Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. How are you? How has your week been? Are you well? Now we've got a planet that's just about to change sign, and I can safely say that I have no idea what happened to me last time Jupiter was in the sign of Cancer. So Jupiter's just about to change, and it changes on the 10th, and it goes from Gemini and it's going into Cancer. I've done a chart which will be up in the show notes, and I've done it for 12 o'clock lunchtime where I live in Bath, and at that moment in time it's 0 degrees Cancer, 7 minutes and 55 seconds. So it will have gone into the sign of Cancer that day, because that's the day that the ephemeris tells me that it changes. But I couldn't be I didn't have time this morning to make it exact for you, but I'm sure it's written somewhere whatever exact time it goes in. Anyway, today what we're going to be covering, Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. I've also looked at people that are born with the Sun and Jupiter conjunct in the sign of Cancer, and amazingly there were very few people that were on that Astro Data Bank that had that, and we've got 2 people, so Sun sign Cancer, Sun conjunct Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So I've got 2 people's charts we're going to be sharing. One's got a horrific story, but anyway. And the third person we're going to share is someone who was born with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer at 15 degrees. And there's a reason for that, so we'll come on to that in a minute. So we've got sort of a few things to cover here. So get nicely settled and off we go. Now, Jupiter is the planet of luck, of beneficial things. It's a nice, inverted commas, friendly planet. It isn't supposed to, you're not supposed to have too much that's negative with a Jupiter thing. It's highlighted as energy in expansion. So wherever Jupiter is in your chart, remembering, of course, that it's a gas giant planet in reality in the sky, and astrologically it represents where we can overdo it if we're not careful. Now, I'm reading from my ephemeris that my very kind auntie gave to me. Or she didn't give it to me, sorry, I inherited it after she'd passed. And it says in there, so this is the ephemeris, the New Weights Compendium for Natal Astrology came out in the year dot. And he says, so Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, domestic abilities, power of expression, good actor, as in inverted commas, like a goodie. So it's not good actor as in somebody that acts, but that's a rather old expression for good actor, somebody that's sort of nice. Diplomatic, fanciful. So when Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer, domestic abilities, power of expression, good actor, diplomatic, fanciful. Now, Margaret E. Hone says in her modern textbook of astrology that when Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer, it's exalted, so we'll talk about that in a minute, exaltation, self-expansion in a kind, protective, sympathetic way. And she does the positives and the negatives, the planets rather like, or exaggeration of wish to keep to the self those held by emotional ties. So that's an interesting one. Exaggeration of wish to keep to the self those held by emotional ties. So you've got an emotional tie with someone and you ain't going to share them with anybody else, or it, whatever the Jupiter bit is in your chart. So she says Jupiter is the power to expand the life in every benefic way, and also the indications as to the way in which the person will fortuitously benefit, but what seems to be luck being on his side will be expressed according to the sign containing Jupiter, which said, so the house, the affairs of the house occupied will show the sphere in which this ability will be used and for which good fortune will accrue. And by rulership, the affairs of the house which has Sagittarius on its cusp will be brought into connection with those of the house occupied. To a certain extent, the same will apply to the house which has Pisces on its cusp, though its correlation seems to be more with Neptune. Now, that book was written quite a while back before Neptune had sort of really been absorbed into the astrological community. And her keywords are expansion, preservation. Okay. Now, obviously, it's going to work its way through your chart. You've got 12 houses in your chart. You're going to have planets in your chart, and Jupiter's going to come along and either do something or not do something, depending on what the configuration of your chart is. Now, in my case, my Cancer bit of my chart is 11th, I think it's 10th and 11th. The Cancer bit is predominantly my 11th house, with a teeny little bit of Gemini at the beginning of it, because I've got a very late ascendant of 27 degrees Leo. So my 11th house starts 27 degrees Gemini, but the majority of it is in the sign of Cancer. I have 0 planets in the sign of Cancer. The 11th in my chart is to do with friendships, and I do, in a sense, so my very good friends, I treat them the same as I treat my family members, which, by the way, is very nicely. I'm not nasty to my friends. And I natally have Jupiter at 0 degrees Capricorn. So I'm going to have a very brief Jupiter opposition. And you blink of an eye, boom, it'll be gone. Because it takes a year to travel through a sign of the zodiac, so it's only going to be in direct opposition to my natal Jupiter for a small amount of time. My natal Jupiter is in my 5th house of creativity, and yes, I have written numbers of books, and yes, I have given birth. But Jupiter's not particularly happy in the sign of Capricorn, so I have to work hard to manifest my natal Jupiter. Anyway, now it's going into the sign of Cancer. And just to add, I don't have any planets in the sign of Libra, so it won't make a square to them. And I have no planets in the sign of Aries, so it won't make a square to that either. It'll just transit its way through my 11th house of friendship. So maybe I ought to go on holiday with me mates, which isn't going to happen because I can't afford that at the moment. Now, when Jupiter does go into the sign of Cancer this year, luckily it's also being followed by Mercury. So Mercury's the planet of communication. And my biggest hope is that in that year that Jupiter makes its transit through the sign of Cancer and is preceded briefly by Mercury being there, because on the 10th, which is when it changes sign, Mercury's already 3 degrees into the sign of Cancer, and it'll only be there for about a month and a bit, but blah blah blah. My hope is there will be some sort of resolution to the 2 major wars that are happening at the moment in Ukraine and in Gaza. So that's my hope for Jupiter going through the sign of Cancer, and that's because my hope, I mean, everybody's got hopes. Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, according to our friend Anthony Louis, and one day I must have him on the show, he says that Jupiter, when it's in the sign of Cancer, is exalted, okay? And especially the 15th degree of Cancer. So wouldn't that be nice? When Jupiter gets to 15 degrees Cancer, which this year, so in 2025, will be the 17th of August, and it'll stay at 15 degrees until the 21st. Wouldn't it be grand if there was some sort of truce, at least, or at least a stopping of killing the general population between those 2 war zones? Wouldn't that be nice? But hey, who knows what is going to happen in those cases, because with Jupiter being exalted, it's happy in that sign. So according to Astro Wiki, which is also part of astro.com, says the term exaltation is derived from the Greek synonym hyposoma, which means to raise up or to exalt something. It's a type of essential dignity. The qualities of a planet and its sign of exaltation are similar, so that when a planet is in its sign of exaltation, it's thought to express its inherent qualities in a particularly pure form. Modern astrologers do not agree on signs for exaltation of the newly discovered planets Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. So the exaltations are usually restricted to the 7 traditional planets. A planet's sign of exaltation is always located opposite the sign of the same planet's fall. So they've got a little chart there, signs of exaltation. Planet Jupiter is definitely got Cancer, the sign there. And it says there, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. And then we've got, according to some 7th century astrologer, Taurus of Egypt, the exaltations are auspicious placements for the planets because the domicile lord of that sign interacts particularly well with the planet that has its exaltation in the sign. In some traditions, there are specific degrees associated with exaltations, and according to Hellenistic sources, the degrees of exaltations are the following. Jupiter is exalted at 15 degrees. Okay, so this bloke said it, so therefore it must be the case. I think we need to take that with a pinch of salt unless we've done millions of charts and found that out. But we don't know. Have you got your Jupiter at 15 degrees Cancer? Have you got your Jupiter in Cancer? And if you have got your Jupiter in Cancer, then you're going to be having a Jupiter return. Now, I've had Jupiter going across my moon. I've got moon in the sign of Gemini. Jupiter has been in the sign of Gemini. I can honestly say it barely did much for me. I made one trip abroad, first one in 20 years, and I went to France. So that was nice because Jupiter is about travel. But in a way, I was sort of expecting the transit to be a little bit more, and obviously it happened 12 years ago prior, expected it to be a little bit more exciting. But because I natally have the sun and the moon square to each other, it's accentuating that in my chart. So we've got to be very careful when we say a planet's going to conjunct something in your chart and it's all going to be happy, because it can be that happy can be detracted or distracted even from what you might have natally as an aspect, because it will also trigger off that natal aspect that you've got. So we have to be aware of saying to somebody, Jupiter's transiting the blah 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 with your chart, it's all going to be lovely. And it won't be lovely. Excuse me, I'm dropping all my books anyway. It won't be lovely if you've natally got something that's going to mess it up. Okay, so be very, very aware of saying that one thing in astrology is just that one thing. I always think, and this is from my experience of having done astrology for zillions of years, is we have to take everything into account, and if we can't take everything into account, do the basics, the sign of the sun and the sign of the moon. And even if you haven't got the ascendant sign, just knowing somebody's sign of the zodiac certainly helps. Now, so when Jupiter goes into Cancer, we have got Mercury in Cancer as well. Those will be the only 2 water signs, apart from when the sun goes into Scorpio, and so that'll be the only other water sign this year, and Mercury will go through it. But as far as outer planets go, Jupiter's spending that 1 year in the sign of Cancer. Is going to be the water that we need to hold on to, because Uranus is going to change into the sign of Gemini in, I think it's either June or July the 19th. Hold on, let me double check. Uranus, yes, it's July the 8th. So in July, Uranus is going to change sign into Gemini. Therefore, we will have we'll have Uranus in the sign of Gemini, we'll have Neptune and Saturn in the sign of Aries, and we've got Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, and there's not much water going on. So luckily, when the first ingress of Uranus going into Gemini, it's not going to be all guns blazing too much, because Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is that little bit of water which will just be tapping people on the shoulder going, have you remembered family? Have you remembered feelings? Have you remembered that we are community? Have you remembered that the family itself is the most important thing alongside saving the planet? So let's go on to these two charts I've got. So this is what Astro Data Bank has thrown up for me. When I searched for the Sun and Jupiter conjunct, there really was quite a list of not so happy people. It was really a small amount that because first of all I searched for 1930 to 2000, and so 1930 to the year 2000, which brought up something mad like 20 something charts, and then I extended the search and I did 1900, and it still didn't, to the present day even, it didn't show an awful lot of people that have ended up on there that have got the Sun and Jupiter conjunct in the sign of Cancer. It really was minimal. When I searched for other variations of things, it was into the hundreds. This wasn't. So the first person we've got, and according to Astro Data Bank, we've got a physical therapist. So this has been supplied by LMR, and they quote her birth certificate. I'm sorry, I can't remember who LMR is, but I'd be guessing if I knew who that is. And this person was born on the 1st of July 1954. They've got Sun Cancer 8 degrees, Moon Cancer 17 degrees, Mercury Cancer 16 degrees, Venus Leo 15, Mars Capricorn 0, Jupiter Cancer 8 degrees. So the Sun and Jupiter exactly conjunct. Saturn's in Scorpio, Uranus is also in Cancer, Neptune's in Libra, Pluto's in Leo. They've got an Aries ascendant and their moon is in Cancer, so their ascendant squares their moon and their sun. And it says on Astro Data Bank, so American physical therapist, a teacher for a few years, who went into alternative health treatment and became a certified massage therapist. She will inherit money from her father. That is 2 sentences of information. That is minimalistic. They were born in Amherst in Massachusetts, if I pronounced that right. And they were born at 1:03 in the morning. So they're born in 1954, so their outer planets is, as I said, Uranus, Cancer, Neptune, Libra, Pluto, Leo. And the third house is pretty chock-a-block with Jupiter, the Sun, Mercury's retrograde, and Moon in Cancer and Uranus. And I think the Uranus falls into the 4th because Uranus is 22 degrees and the ascendant is 21. Yeah, so that falls into the 4th. And so the 3rd is all about communication. So went into alternative health treatment, became a certified massage therapist. But I thought it was interesting how they'd got the second sentence, she will inherit money from her father. Well, I don't know when this, do I know when this was written? This was written, no, it's not got the date. It was actually, can I right click on the view page source? One minute, let's have a check. 2019 the page was created, so that's quite a while ago. So did they? I mean, Jupiter is supposed to be lucky. This isn't at 15 degrees, this person has, it's at 8 degrees, but they're going to inherit. I do think because that's quite a stellium of all those planets together in Cancer, that does create more chaos rather than calmness, especially with Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is also conjunct Uranus, so this person could have changed their mind about whatever it is they wanted to do. But hey, so this is a person that's born with the Sun conjunct Jupiter that is doing the therapy thing and supposedly is going to inherit. Okay, so that's chart number 1. Now, chart number 2 is the saddest story. So I'll read you the story first, and then we'll look at the chart. So, according to Astro Data Bank, so I've also got the Wikipedia page open as well, but I'll start with Astro Data Bank. So this is a lady called Amy Grossberg, who was born in 1978, 10th of July 1978, and there I am searching for Sun conjunct Jupiter, and this must be the most horrific story. Anyway, American teenager who gave birth to a baby and discarded it in a trash bag. She and her beau, Brian Peterson Jr., born on the 10th of June 1978, Long Island, New York, both 18, from good homes and affluent, caring background, were in love. When Amy got pregnant, they kept it a secret. When she went into labour on the 12th of November 1996, they drove to a motel in Newark, Delaware, where they delivered a baby boy, put it in a plastic bag and left it in a dumpster. They checked into the motel about 3 a.m, delivered the baby boy at about 4:30 a.m. and checked out at 5 a.m. The baby was found and diagnosed as a live, healthy birth. It had died from multiple skull injuries and from having been shaken. The families were devastated. On the 9th of July 1998, the two former lovers sat in a courtroom for sentencing, not looking across the room at each other. Grossberg, that's Amy the girl, was given 2.5 years prison, and Peterson, the boy, 2 years. It was the day before Grossberg's 20th birthday. She was released from prison on May 2000 for good behaviour, serving only 17 months of her 2.5 year sentence. Now, I don't think anybody actually knows why they decided to put the baby in the dustbin. They said in their defence that they thought the baby was dead. But can't comment on that. But what I can comment on is I did the synastry for the date and time that the baby was born, just to see how it might, because I don't want to make this whole podcast all about this awful situation. But you sort of think, what was it that was going through their minds, or how did apparently she was at college and she was wearing baggy clothes to conceal the fact that she was pregnant. And I have worked with numbers of clients that have got pregnant at, so this is homeopathy clients that have got pregnant at university, or discovered that they were pregnant at university, and generally speaking, someone else in the family will assist them. And one lady that worked with, her mother stepped in big time and helped her and looked after the baby. My older sister was at university or in a year gap year or something, and she was already pregnant. My parents were Catholic, and they definitely said that if she didn't want to keep the baby, that they would adopt it, but there was no question of her having an abortion. I don't even think she even considered having an abortion, and I'm not against abortion, okay, so don't think I'm going down that line. I'm not. However, this was and even if the child had died when it was born, at least don't stick it in a dustbin. They're saying that the children were very young, but I don't know, I think quite a lot of young kids do know what they're doing. Anyway, so I've got Amy's natal chart. She's born 10th of July 78, Taurus ascendant, Sun conjunct Jupiter at 17 degrees. So that's 2 degrees past this happy thing at 15 degrees. The moon's in Virgo, conjunct Mars, which is in the 4th. Mercury's in Leo, 11 degrees. So this is somebody born with the Sun and Jupiter conjunct. Okay, and the Sun and Jupiter are in the 3rd house, and Mercury's there in the 3rd as well. In the 4th is Venus Saturn conjunction Venus Saturn conjunction in Leo, Moon Mars conjunction in Virgo, Pluto in Libra in the 5th, Uranus in Scorpio retrograde in the 6th, Neptune retrograde in Sagittarius in the 7th. Whilst the boyfriend, we don't have a time of birth for him, but we have a date of birth, which is on the Wikidata page, and it's from a book. A local journalist wrote a book about the story framing it mostly that this child came into life and was abandoned and didn't have a life. So the boyfriend, Brian, is Sun, Gemini, Moon, Leo, Mercury, Gemini, Venus, Cancer, Mars, Leo, Jupiter, Cancer, Saturn, Leo, Uranus, Scorpio, Neptune, Sagittarius, Pluto, Libra. And he's born on the 10th of June, 78. She is born 10th of July. So both on the same date, but different months, totally different signs of the zodiac. So that's, which I'll include on there. So these are people that were born with Jupiter in Cancer, but it's her, Amy, that had the Sun-Jupiter conjunct. Now, they were from families that were supposedly well-to-do and had a couple of bobs, so they weren't short of money, so it wasn't a financial thing. So I thought, I just wanted to just share with you the synastry charts for the child himself. So he's a little boy and we've got his chart. He's born at 4:35 a.m. in Newark in DE. Is that Delaware? I just said it earlier and I can't remember what it is. DE. And he's a sun sign Scorpio, Moon, Sagittarius, Mercury, Scorpio, Venus, Libra, Mars, Virgo, Jupiter, Capricorn, Saturn, Aries, Uranus, Aquarius, Neptune, Capricorn, Pluto, Sagittarius. He's born early in the morning, 4:35 a.m. Chiron is exactly conjunct the ascendant. That doesn't indicate that you're going to get put in a plastic bag when you're born at all. However, there is Chiron represents the wounds, the wounded part of things. But one would consider the moon, I would have thought, would be important in this child's chart, and the moon is exactly conjunct Pluto. So the experience the child has had at birth of the mother, Pluto and the moon conjunct by less than 3 degrees, is not a fluffy placement. The sun is in the first, but it's way to the end of the first. So because there's a time of birth, not to the exact moment, but approximate, then I can then create a synastry chart for how did this birth impact these two people. So the mother, who's given birth to the child, and the father, who has fathered the child. And 9 months is a long time to walk about being pregnant. I have been pregnant. It isn't something that you can ignore, because if nothing else, you are getting bigger. There's only one person I know that got pregnant and they didn't really grow much at all, and the baby didn't really notice, just looked like a little bit tubby. But me, I exploded. But anyway, so this poor little child, and that's the person that we need to be thinking about, didn't make it into the world because of whatever it was that was going on with mummy and daddy. So just to briefly cover, I've got Amy's chart with the baby's chart, and the ascendant of the baby, as I already said, Libra ascendant. The ascendant for the baby falls into mum's 6th house, so that Chiron lands there as well. The baby's got Venus at 16 degrees Libra, and it's not far off from mum's Pluto at 13 degrees Libra. Amy does have Pluto in the 5th and the North Node, and I thought that was interesting that the 5th house is creativity, romance, babies, that her life purpose was in some ways to create something, which she did. Generally speaking, sweeping generalizations here now, Cancer is the sign of the zodiac that is about mothering and motherhood. But I wonder whether or not, when it's conjunct to Jupiter, if that makes the energy of Cancer so much bigger that there's too much emotion to cope with what might or might not be happening. But anyway, so the baby has Mars at 7 degrees Virgo. mummy has the moon at 10 degrees Virgo. So if we're looking at past lives, and mum also has Mars in Virgo, so there were brothers in a previous life, there were brother and sister in a previous life, and Amy's also got Saturn in Leo conjunct Venus, which doesn't do anything to the baby, no. But the ascendant falls into her 6th house. And the baby's planets fall into her 7th house of close personal relationships. So you've got the Sun, you've got Mercury, you've got Pluto conjunct the Moon, all in her 7th house. Yeah, so I don't think that's something that she'll ever forget. Who knows? And her natal MC, the baby's Neptune and Uranus exactly conjunct that. So the baby's born in 96, so the baby's an indigo baby really, and it's conjunct her MC, and so there's that in the mix. So that's her dynamic. And then from Brian, the boyfriend's point of view, I don't have a birth time for him, but I got the date of birth. So I was looking to see, what conjunctions were going on. We haven't got the time of birth for him, just the date. So is there anything? Yes, he natally has Mars in Leo, and the baby's got Mars in Virgo. They're not far apart degree-wise, but they're not in the same sign. Baby has North Node, 7 degrees Libra, and he has his North Node 2 degrees Libra. Now, he apparently has remarried quite swiftly after this. Well, after he came out of prison, he's remarried. He has married. Yeah. But the baby doesn't connect sign-wise with much in his chart, other than the baby has Venus in Libra and he has Pluto in Libra. So Pluto's 13 degrees and Venus is 16 degrees. So that Pluto that the child is born with, so this, you could sort of say this is a Pluto issue, deep change, transformation, who knows. And he's a sun sign Gemini with Mercury in Gemini, so he's got the ability to communicate. That's not an issue here. I've chosen 6 a.m. as a birth time, but please don't take that as exact, because it ain't. That's just the 6 a.m. that I use. So I thought that was, I'm not going to use the word interesting, because that isn't interesting as in, oh, wow, that isn't. That was, I thought, unusual, that there's somebody that could be born with Sun conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter's about belief, etc. Would then, was that because of her family's beliefs or her beliefs that she can't have a child, or she's too young to have a child, or who can I tell? My parents are always upset when that happens. I do know a number of people that had kiddies unexpectedly still at school. I know a lady, and she'd had her kids when she was at school, and she gave birth to a daughter who also gave birth when she was at school too. I know numbers of people that have done that. So it just tends to run through families. But yeah, who knows why this happened. So the last chart we've got here is George Harrison. So you've probably heard of him. He was a Beatle, and he was born with Jupiter retrograde 15 degrees Cancer in his 9th house. Now, you can't say that George Harrison wasn't successful. If we're saying, Jupiter's exalted in the sign of Cancer at 15 degrees, my question is, I don't know the answer to this one. Is it still exalted when it's retrograde? I shouldn't think it changes it if we're saying it's a number. He's definitely got a 15 degrees Jupiter. That is the only Cancer planet he's got, and it's in his 9th house of long distance travel, further education and philosophy. George Harrison was born on the 25th of February 1943 at midnight, 10 minutes past midnight, early in the morning, and he's got a Scorpio ascendant, a moon in Scorpio, but his sun sign's Pisces. And as Margaret was mentioning earlier, that when looking at Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, also take into account Neptune. He himself has got Neptune. Where's his Neptune gone? It's in the sign of Libra. And he lived a very successful life. I can't remember if he's still alive. No, he died age 58 in 2001. I think there's only one Beatle left, or maybe there's the drummer still alive, Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, he was in a band and it was very successful, and you sort of wonder, I wonder if that Jupiter exalted in the sign of Cancer in the 9th house helped him. But I mean, it's not a ruler to his chart, it's not a ruler to much really. I mean, it's a ruler, an old ruler to the sign of Pisces. He was born with a Scorpio ascendant, a moon right on the ascendant, the sun in the 5th. We definitely did that, creativity for sure, and his Venus is there as well. His Mercury's in Aquarius, that's in the 4th, and his Mars is in Capricorn in the 3rd. And he's got Pluto, MC, True Node, Chiron all up in the 10th, Saturn in Gemini in the 8th, and Uranus in Gemini in the 7th. I think I covered all the planets there, yeah. But you'll have heard of him, or you might have heard of the band called the Beatles. Depends when you were born. So today we've been talking about Jupiter, which is just about to go into the sign of Cancer. Where's that going to transit through your chart? Can you remember back to 12 years ago? Where was it in your chart? Did it do anything? I can safely say that zero has happened to me because of Jupiter going through my 11th and being in the sign of Cancer hasn't done anything for me. What I'm hoping for is that the two wars that are raging at the moment, there'll be some sort of peaceful ending of at least the killing of civilians. Would be lush if that were to happen. They can still disagree about stuff, but so I hope you have a fab week. I will be back next week. If you'd like to learn astrology with me, just ping me an email or pop over to my website maryenglish.com. There's lots of info on there. You can book your first lesson. There's 6 lessons, and just remind you that if you do work one-on-one with me, there's no classes. I'm not teaching you. I'm sending you Word documents and videos, links to videos, and then when you book your first lesson, you're choosing a date to have the Zoom call with me, so you have a 1 hour. So with each lesson, so there's 6 lessons in Introduction to Astrology, 6 lessons in Next Steps Astrology. What date you're choosing on the calendar is the date when you'll actually be having a chat with me and going through the lesson that you've learned. Now, if you have already listened to every episode, and we're up to episode 443 now, thank you for listening this far, and you'd like to go a bit further with your astrological practice, then on my website on the booking page, which you just click on the first page, there's a thing that I call supervision or mentoring or coaching. So those sessions are available as well. So you've got to a nice stage with your astrology and you just need to run past what you've learned with me. Again, that date that you choose on there is the date for the Zoom call. And obviously, if you're going to do that, please send me some questions beforehand so I know what it is that we're going to go through. So I hope you have a fab week. I'll be back next week. Bye-bye now.